hamburger.
I would like to buy a 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 hamburger.
No. Let's break it down. I
I
would
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 weird
would
weird
like
like
to
toi
to
toi
to
toi
buy buy.
B.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
It's not hamburger, hamburger.
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 Ham.
M.
Bur.
Burger.
What happened here is a clear disconnection between the two persons participating in the conversation. Therefore, in order to be able to have a clear and effective dialogue, we must know and practice the skills of effective communication. Effective communication skills. By the end of this course, you will be able to define the communication process, demonstrate communication process barriers, discuss how to overcome communication barriers, explain nonverbal communication aspects. Module 1. Communication process. Components of the communication process. The communication process in its simplest form is the transmission of an idea, information, or a meaning, which is the message, from a person who is the sender to another person who is the recipient, through a specific way, which is the communication channel that differs according to the situation. Elements of the communication process. The first element of the communication process is the sender, who must have a specific objective that he or she wants to accordingly convey with his or her message. The sender then decides on the form of the message and must choose the method in which to employ that message. The method, whether spoken or not, is the means or channel that the message must pass through. It is important to highlight that there is an area of distraction or noise that affects the message and the method, and this interference is called the external environmental factors that may limit the message delivery. This message must be received, and the recipient is the one that receives it and is influenced by the message. This process must be governed by a specific context and, from the other side, a frame of reference, which is a component of the common experiences existing between the sender and the recipient, or between the sender and the receiver. Elements of the communication. Components of communication. The communication process, in which a specific message is sent from one side to the other, consists of four basic components, namely, the sender is the party that controls the communication process by sending the message in some way. The receiver is the party that receives messages sent from the first party, which is the sender, and he or she does not have control over the communication process like the first party. The message. They are words or signals that the sender transmits to the receiver through the communication process, followed by a reaction, which is considered by some people as a fifth component of the communication process. The means of communication is a tool in which messages and signals are transmitted from the sender to the receiver to reach the desired goal of the communication process. Factors of effective communication. The sender should determine who is the recipient of the message. Define the recipient. The sender should understand the content and how the message can be sent. The sender should present his message in a way that attracts the recipient. The sender should choose the suitable methods or means in sending the message. The sender should choose the right time to send the message. The sender must make sure that the message was well received. The communication process. The communication process is made up of 4 key components. These components include encoding, medium of transmission, decoding, and feedback. There are also 2 other factors in the process, and those 2 factors are presented in the form of the sender and the receiver. Module 2. Communication Process Barriers. Verbal communication barriers. Rumors and thoughts. Rumors, thoughts, and pre-impressions, if wrong, can hinder effective communication. Misunderstanding. Using words can sometimes cause misinterpretation that may result in conflicts and hinder effective communication. Stereotyping. Stereotyping hinders effective communication and may lead to missing a good chance of understanding. Cultural differences. Voice tone differs among cultures. Example, some cultures consider loud voice as disrespect and insult. Some common barriers to effective communication include the use of jargon, overcomplicated or unfamiliar terms, emotional barriers and taboos, lack of attention, interest, distractions, or irrelevance to the receiver, differences in perception and viewpoint, physical disabilities such as hearing problems or speech difficulties, physical barriers to nonverbal communication, language differences and the difficulty in understanding unfamiliar accents, expectations and prejudgment, which may lead to false assumptions or stereotyping. People often hear what they expect to hear rather than what is actually said and jump to incorrect conclusions. Cultural differences. The norms of social interaction vary greatly in different cultures, as do the way in which emotions are expressed. For example, the concept of personal space varies between cultures and between different social settings. Module 3. Overcoming communication barriers. Overcome communication barriers. as they affect the message interpretation. Developing effective communication. Personal barriers. It is a set of influences and factors that are related to the sender and the receiver and have a negative effect on them. The starting point of these obstacles is the mental perception and/or awareness of the two parties that contributes to the existence of individual differences which make individuals differ in their judgment of matters, their emotions, and the extent of their understanding of communication, and how they respond to it. Also, the lack of the ability to have proper expression, choose vague terms, and the extent of trust between individuals, and this lack of trust may lead to non-cooperation. All these factors can result in blocking of information from each other and thus makes the communication process a complex process. Module 3. Overcome communication barriers. Personal barriers. It is a set of influences and factors that are related to the sender and the receiver. Communication channels. Poor selection of the appropriate communication channels hinders the message from arriving. For example, the message that relates to opinions, feelings, and tendencies is preferable to be verbal and face-to-face, including showing appreciation or dissatisfaction. On the other hand, the message that contains instructions preferably to be in written form or both written and oral. Language and vocabulary. The problem of language and vocabulary appears in the misinterpretation of words, which causes many problems when transmitting the message. And this occurs as a result of the different cultural backgrounds and experiences on both sides. The sender must ensure that the message has been received within the required meaning by means of feedback, because common words have more than one explanation. An example of this is as follows. An official in a company announced the need to work with maximum production efficiency. Some interpreted it as the need to increase production whatever the cost is. Others interpreted it on the need to pressure production expenditures, while others understood it as the necessity to increase the number of workers in order to increase production opportunities. Environmental barriers are the set of factors that exist in the society in which the individual lives and affects her or him. These factors are the language used and the interpretation of the meanings of some words in light of values, customs, and traditions. Separate words from personal relationships as they affect the message interpretation. Developing effective communication skills minimize the communication barriers. Choose right and suitable communication channels. Right information results in right decision. Using right language, vocabulary, expressions, and nonverbal behaviors. Overcome the communication barriers. Clear objective. Convenient time. Awareness, knowledge, and experience. Environmental barriers. Feedback. Language and vocabulary. Communication channels. Personal barriers. How to overcome barriers of communication at work. Communicate only what is needed. Noise and distractions can clog up the communication process on all levels. Avoid using slang language. Remain aware of cultural differences. Stay open-minded for questions and answers. Choose a communication app. Module 4. Nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication or body language is one of the oldest methods of communication known to mankind. Nonverbal communication always complements, reinforces, or explains verbal communication. More than 75% of all human actions are involuntary, and the remaining 25% are voluntary. Involuntary behaviors are often nonverbal, that is, through gestures or symbols, and are 5 times effective than words. Nonverbal communication shows someone's true thoughts, feelings, and intentions. Therefore, nonverbal behaviors are sometimes referred to as statements because they tell us about a person's true mental state. Nonverbal communication is the most important part of any message transmitted to the recipient. The nonverbal message conveyed is rich and complex in nature and contains facial expressions, body movements, hands, feet, clothes of the sender, gaze, tension, and emotions. Nonverbal advantages of nonverbal communication. It expresses emotional information which is not expressed verbally. Gives information related to the content of the verbal message. It provides us with tools to interpret the words we hear, such as tone of voice, facial expressions, and so on. In addition, it is useful in understanding the nature of the relationship between the parties involved in the communication process. Nonverbal messages are distinguished by their sincerity and honesty, because they often cannot be controlled and hard to pretend. Functions of nonverbal communication. Complete, where the verbal message matches and complements the nonverbal one, which leads to a good interaction where words are issued and accompanied by a gesture or signal, such as the movement of raising 2 fingers to express the number 2. Repeat, such as the movement of the hands that indicates repetition of something. Adjust. What is meant here is to correct the behavior of the receiver, whether it is with a sharp look from the eye or raising the palm in front of her or him to stop or interpret, or using the 3 clenched fingers to express slow down. Switch. Here, the spoken word is replaced by a physical movement, such as moving the head left and right, indicating denial or rejection, or pointing with the forefinger indicating the assignment of the message or accusation. Assure. This is done by using nonverbal communication to confirm verbal messages. For example, facial expressions indicating message confirmation. Organize. Organizing and linking the communication flow between the parties of communication, such as the movement of the head or eyes, or giving a signal to the other person to complete the conversation or stop it, or to take his or her turn in responding. Nonverbal communication. Body posture. Eye contact. Hands gestures. Nonverbal communication categorization. Nonverbal communication can be categorized into 8 types: space, time, physical characteristics, body movements, touch, paralanguage, artifacts, environment. Course summary. After finishing the Effective Communication Skills course, you are now able to define the communication process, demonstrate communication process barriers, discuss how to overcome communication barriers, explain nonverbal communication aspects.